Hi everybody, Mike Reese here. I'm going to be doing a movie review, martial arts movie reviews that I'm going to do on Fridays. And the reason why I figured to do this is I watch a lot of like movie talk shows on YouTube, and they don't ever really go over like martial arts movies. I ask the questions, they never get to them, and I'm always asking about them because I'm always wondering more and more about what makes a good martial arts movie, what do people think. And even John Campea, the guy that's on AMC Movie News, he actually trains in MMA, or has, and even trained with Randy Couture. And as you see in the background here, I have Redbelt, and that's what I'm going to be discussing today, is Redbelt. One of the things about this movie, I'm going to tell you the stuff that I love about this movie and the stuff that I don't really like about the movie. And then I'm going to tell you how I kind of interpreted the movie and the overall review. First off, let's talk about the movie in itself. I think that I like how this captures it. It captures what's going on in the competition, but it captures what this guy's about. Now, the good parts about this is it's all about like the actual integrity of martial arts, like what people talk about. It's like everybody's talking about what makes a good martial artist, what makes a good martial art, that kind of thing, and what do people envision when they see martial arts. When I think of martial arts, I envision the character portrayed here by Chiwetel Ejiofor, or I can't even that name. I can't say it. I don't know how to say it very well. But anyways, he does a great job as the guy named Mike Terry. Now, his character, Mike Terry, is wonderful character in my opinion because he's so relatable to me. I relate to him because he's a guy who doesn't want to do competition because it dulls the fighter. And because there's rules in competition, but no rules when you're in combat. You know, he teaches law enforcement, soldiers, bodyguards, security officers, corrections officers, where those type of rules do not exist. They do not apply. And he's thrust into this whole thing. So it's all about honor, integrity, hardships, keeping your integrity, being selfless in a selfish world, and being honest in a dishonest world. It really brings a lot of things into this whole spectrum. One thing that the movie does well, some of the good stuff in it, the fight scenes are done real well. I think they, in my opinion, they're done almost to the point where they're a little more gritty rather than flashy. And I like grittier fight scenes in action movies compared to flashy because it's really more realistic to me. If it's got to be like this, and the other good things was how they portrayed this guy. He's having a hard time keeping his school open, being so true to what he wants to do. It's hard for him to keep the doors open on his school. It's hard for him to do this because he doesn't compete, so he's not constantly getting advertisement. It's hard for him to do that stuff because, in honesty, for him, it's not about selling the art. It's about teaching it to the right people and to teaching it to people who need it the most. That's his whole heart. He is a fighter. He's a warrior. And he sees things from that perspective. I love that side of it. I love seeing that side of it. And it's because it's amazing. It's amazing when you think about it in a martial arts point of view, because that's what I try to do. And I had the same hardships that he did. So it's so relatable to me when it comes to that sort of issue. It's like, oh man, I totally understand what it's like. Man, I don't know what I would have done if my window would have went out in my studio. I mean, oh my goodness. I can't pay my bills. I can't, it's hard for me to get the rent going. And it kind of fell on my wife and things at that time. So it's like very relatable because I wanted to stay true to what I believe martial arts is, military arts really is. And that's what he's suffering with, and that's what he's really struggling with. I also like the fact that even though it was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing. Because it really was. I think, because I know the Machados were involved in this movie. So there is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu theme to it, but it's a Jiu-Jitsu theme. Because you see because throughout the story, it's not even just jiu-jitsu. I mean, they even use Dan Inosanto as the professor, as his red belt guy. That the red belt, the only belt left, which is red belt, which is normally 10th Dan. Just so anybody there with ninjutsu ever wants to know, it's 10th Dan, and it's normally a red belt. Just letting you know. That's what the red belt is. It's about mastery, complete. That whole side of being presented that soke-ship. Now, of course, there's still a lot of UFC fighters in this. There's a lot of things about this because, again, it was, like I said, it was a Machado presentation. It was about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it was about Jiu-Jitsu because you got Dan Inosanto in there, who's a Kali guy, but he also he does know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Thing is, though, it's not just about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's, even though that's kind of like the fight that they have at the end, it's not like how they have it presented. It's about Jiu-Jitsu versus Jiu-Jitsu, but it's the Japanese versus the Brazilian guy, and it seems like almost like that's like a metaphor for people saying it's Japanese Jiu-Jitsu versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then there's a guy that just wants to train. He doesn't care what kind of Jiu-Jitsu it is. He's trained in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, he's trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he's also training in Kali. He's just training as a warrior to be a warrior. And in the end, he's the one who gets the belt. And I think that is very integral to me because I think that's really what we should be focused on, is how do we become a warrior? How do we become more than just the guys worried about the color of our belts, the style of our gi, or where our system came from? When do we stop worrying about that and just start thinking about what it does for us as human beings and what are we really looking for? And I like this movie because of the fact that for me, like I said, it's very relatable. Now, it's obvious. I'm gonna get to the bad points now. It's pretty obvious that it's not a high budget movie. However, what's amazing though is you have people like Joe Mantegna, Tim Allen, and stuff like that in this movie. And so, but I've seen better acting out of Randy Couture in The Expendables. So it's like I guess it's like you get all this going and you go, wow, it's really kind of bad when it comes to that perspective. The acting isn't really all that bad. The performances aren't all that bad. It's just, I think the way it was set up, the flow of the movie, the pace of the movie was really, really bad. I don't think it was fast enough. It didn't really get into a lot of things. There was like subplots that could build that went nowhere. Like they started a subplot and then it dropped. It's like, man, what happened there? What was going on there? That kind of thing. And it just, I don't know, there's some things that just really didn't, I don't know, it didn't fly with me too well because it was like, it kind of just stalls the movie and it's kind of like, oh, wow. Even as far as the guy killing, now, if you haven't seen this movie, don't watch this because I am going to spoil some of this. There's going to be spoilers in here. The guy who came in, the cop came in, and he had such quote-unquote honor. It's more of a Bushido type of honor, where he kills himself rather than dishonoring his school. That's such a Bushido type of mindset, a samurai type mindset, which, of course, I think that's what they're trying to embody. But I think to myself, wow, what a selfish individual and act. They're really, I don't care how much you want to honor certain things. There's like really no need for certain things, but I get what they're trying to push on it, but I just didn't care for it. There's some things that just didn't make sense. When they go to the bar, when he first does his like fight where everybody sees the big fight where he's seen. It's supposed to be a loud club. No noise whatsoever except for some people milling around. So it's like the soundtrack's way, way off. It's bad. I mean, it's like, man, they're making do. It's supposed to be this loud place, and it just I don't know. That whole scene was off to me. That whole scene was. Except for the fighting, and then as soon as he got into the fight, it was not too bad. But then you see more of a Kali display with some jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, I could have saw that same stuff done with a guy that was Kaji Kembo. I could say the same stuff with anybody who has trained how to fight with certain things that knows how to throw. So it wasn't like it was being truly honoring a certain style, which maybe that's the whole point. It wasn't to honor a true style, but more of the warriorship. So it was just kind of like, wow, that was pretty, the fight scene was not too bad, and I liked seeing that this guy was kind of going outside of what he was doing, Very, very interesting to see. They unfortunately, to me, paint Brazilians to be a very selfish and self-serving nation, and that's sad. And you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that because this whole family was in this. This guy's wife and her brothers, very self-serving, very selfish, and very about me, 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 me. The wife definitely was. She wasn't very understanding about anything. And it's because her brother fought, and she didn't see any reason why her husband shouldn't fight, that kind of thing. And I just kind of, I don't know, I kind of lost interest in that whole thing. And part of me was like, dude, just let her walk out the door then, dude. Forget it. You know what? You can handle your bills. And if you go to destitute, at least you don't have to listen to her whine. That's just me. I don't know. I was having a hard time dealing with that whole side of it. Dealing with brother-in-laws and stuff, trying to tell you how to do the business and doing money with families, I can understand. Like I said, it was a very relatable show. I liked a lot of parts of it. There were some things that were done very poorly, but at the same time, I think the structure of what they wanted to keep their mindset on was good, but I think it drifted off on certain things, and I don't know about, this whole movie star thing, and I think they could have approached it differently, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe they thought to try to do a different way, but then the only thing that made sense was you meet this action star who you go to set, they compliment you, and you're struggling, so you would like to have this ability. I mean, the guy was a humble man. He was an honorable guy, and I appreciated showing a person that was trying to stay true to the training that he believed that it was. But it also showed, basically, your training is going to be what your training is, man. I mean, but it also showed how people really gravitate to that realistic style of training. And they really do. And like the marble idea, I think the marble idea is great. I know of other people that do similar things like that, putting like rocks or marbles in a shoe, like that way it simulates that you have a pain in your foot, kind of a thing, and it like you disabled your ankle, your foot's broken, and you still got to fight. Fighting from one knee, fighting from the ground, laying down, stomach first, that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of situations and scenarios that people, if you're training to be a warrior or you're training for what he says, I love how he says it. He goes, are you training people to fight? And he goes, I'm training people to prevail. I love prevail. I love that, to prevail. That's like the keyest thing, right? So there are some things that I thought were not good. Like it's like you were gonna, like the cop's wife shows up. Hey, I need to talk to Joe. Okay, okay, what's going on? Well, just tell him, okay. And it's like, and some of the dialogue was pretty weak. They were just repeating each other, or they're repeating statements. It was almost just poor dialogue. There was like, it went nowhere. You tried to put, and it was like trying to push a certain venue, and it was like, because some of the acting was a little bit off, because the reactions were off, it didn't go very well. It didn't flow very well, so it threw the pace of the movie off. Because eventually I was getting to the point where I just wanted to do dishes too. I mean, because it was slowing down. It slowed down in these areas, and it was like, dude, you got to start putting things out there a little more. And I felt bad for the character. Of course, the hero you always feel bad for. Now, when it comes to the whole, this is where I'm going to get into like being kind of a nerdy guy. I am a sucker, though, for movies that does not harp on a style, but harps on the guy winning. He's not fighting for a certain system. He's not fighting to help this out and this out. He's not even showing off that he's this special forces, whatever. He just says, yeah, I was in the military. Yeah, I trained these guys. And that's all very true. You know, I mean, you can train these guys, and you can be part of the military, and that's how you know how, you know, what you're talking about when it comes to combat and battlefield type of tactics. You're accustomed to it. So I always appreciate shows that, you know, the guy doesn't have to be this, you know, well, man, he was a secret operative, or he was this, that, and the other black ops dude. Really, you got to be all that just to be a total bad man? Dude, I know some, you know, I know guys, like, I saw a movie, and I love this movie too, Interview with a Hitman. The guy never went into the military, but he was a dangerous individual. There are guys that like that. They didn't go to the military. They weren't military-grade things, because, one, they probably would have been psychologically failed anyway, but they were just as dangerous as any operative. And the reason why, they may not be as tactical, but they're dangerous. And some guys are very smart when it comes to certain tactics, so some people do it anyway. So I like the fact that they didn't harp on that side of it, but they went into a guy, but he didn't know what he's talking about. He was a soldier, so that was cool. They showed that his knife fighting skill was not jiu-jitsu, guys. It was not jiu-jitsu. You can tell it was Kali based. It was not jiu-jitsu based. I thought that was funny, and I thought that was good that he was reading his book. And I mean, I love the fact that he was reading like these old jiu-jitsu manuals, which was Japanese jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I was like, see, because he was talking about it's jiu-jitsu. Whether it's Brazilian or Japanese, it doesn't matter. You can incorporate both. You know why? Because they actually blend. They actually should be the same. You should have an art that encompasses all the same stuff that this stuff did, that the Brazilians say they did, that they've figured out. And it's not that they figured it out. It's just one guy had to adjust it for his height and his build and all that stuff. People still got to do that, because what worked for him, which he was a 94-pound little man, it's not going to work for a 6'4" guy that's 240. It doesn't work. And you see it. You see only certain things work for certain guys. And then, you know, of course, I think even Randy Couture in the movie takes a dig at him. He goes, yeah, I tell him, yeah, that's what we've been doing since I was in 7th grade wrestling or something like that. And him being a wrestler and being a part of the whole, you know, jiu-jitsu, you know, thing, because he's been around, we got to remember, he was a wrestler. Yeah, he sat on the top, man, for a few different times. Chuck Liddell was a grappler. He wasn't a grappler. Stayed on the top for a long time. John Jones is known more for his Muay Thai skill than he is for grappling skill, which I think is interesting, because people find that more interesting. More the striking aspect far more interesting. I know really good wrestlers that can out grapple a jiu-jitsu guy. If they are submission wrestlers, they know different things than like Mark Hatmaker. Mark Hatmaker is a great example of a submission wrestler that if you put his principles and concepts into play, and you do some of the methods that he uses as far as a wrestler is concerned, he does things that can counter and have countered and have blown away certain people in the jiu-jitsu world. And then there's also times, it's also because he's not looking for the grappling scenario of this is going to win a tournament. He says, you know, take your head, grab the back of their head, and instead of put your thumbs in their eye, you take your head and lift up and bridge up, put your head into their eyeball. And it starts crushing that cheek, this eye socket right here, the ocular bones and stuff around the face. Hurts like crazy bad. Crazy, crazy bad. And trust me, some guy tried to put on a choke, and I just grabbed his head and slammed my head into his head, and I pressed down and held it down. And guess what happened? He let go of the choke. And as soon as that happened, I slipped his head over, and I had this crazy head thing right here. And when that happened, of course, he released and got out, and which was fine, because all I was trying to do was get out. And then there's so many people that are out there that just they don't know certain things. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is good, but really, honestly, and I'm not dogging Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has an underrated street curriculum. There's some things that they do combatively that I think they do really well. But I think if you look hard enough, you'll see it. It's in regular jiu-jitsu curriculums. Some of the things they do is just from jiu-jitsu. It has nothing to do with Brazil. It has to do with the curriculum that he was taught by the judo and jiu-jitsu guys. So I really never rack up. When I say Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I honestly take Brazilian jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu. In Japanese jiu-jitsu, I just say jiu-jitsu. It doesn't matter where it's from. It's the same. It really is honestly the same thing. And so I never really say it's from here or from there. It's jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. Okay? Just so you guys understand. But the fact that, I think, like I said, Machado, but I don't know if he was, like, digging in this movie, if he was, like, trying to take a dig, like, oh, hey, guess what? Boom. Competition's a little too this, that, the other. You guys need to, like, liven it up a little bit. It's not as realistic as you guys would. I don't know if it was a dig at, like, his cousins, the Gracies, or what, but it was almost like a dig at competition and saying you need to stay more pure, you need to stay more true. I don't know if that's what it was, but I do know that I do like that part about it, is the fact that it is about this guy trying to stay true and not competing, and the struggles that he has, the struggles he has with it, and how it does affect him business-wise. And that is a struggle, and I understand that struggle, and I respect the fact that they tried to point that out in this movie. So there was some good things. Like I said, bad plot. There were some subplot points, went nowhere. Certain things happening that I really don't think they need to have in there. There were certain parts of it that was kind of like, okay, I don't get it. Huh? And really, honestly, some of the times that they would say certain things, like this, they had this promoter guy that would, like, blurt out the F-bomb, like, throughout the show. I'm like, honestly, the guy doesn't even need to say it within those terms, and he wouldn't have in that situation. The way these guys talk and some of the writing, it seems, I don't know, it was a little weak for me. But, again, it was straight to video. I don't think it didn't go to the big screen anyway. However, so for a cheap movie, the performances were still pretty good, and I think the subject line for me always touches me, and I do always enjoy watching it. So I like the fact that they showed the rigged fights, and I mean, like I said, I think there was a little bit of a dig of stealing thoughts and ideas and rigging the fights, and I don't know. That maybe it was just me just looking into that a little too much, but it looks like there was like some digging in on that one to the cousins, because he's a Machado, and you got the Machados and the Gracies, and the Machados are cousins. It's like, I'm wondering if there wasn't a bit of a dig on that, but that's that's neither here nor there. It's speculation though. So, but this was a good movie review. Next time, you guys can leave comments and tell me what you want next time, or I'm just gonna do Warrior, because that's another show that I think did hit the big screen and was totally awesome. That was just probably, bar none, probably one of the best MMA fighting movies ever. So it's either going to be Warrior or whatever, or see what my suggestions do. Okay, whatever's outweighs it. If it outweighs it, like a bunch of different things outweigh Warrior, I'll watch that instead. Okay, so I'll see you guys later. I'll talk to you soon.